So hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Wayne Baker, and today we're going to continue the series that we started a few weeks ago called How Could You? Today specifically, we're going to talk about moral justification. So you know that cheating and fraud, deception, and other forms of unethical behaviors are among some of the greatest personal and societal problems and challenges that we face. While the media focuses on politicians and athletes and corporations, there's a lot less attention to a more widespread forms of unethical actions committed by just ordinary people like you and me. One approach to violating our beliefs of right and wrong is by redefining our behavior. I see this almost every day. Most people won't intentionally act in ways that they know to be wrong until first they found a way to justify the morality of their actions, this mental gymnastics that goes on. And whether it's infidelity or fudging on an expense report or cutting corners on your taxes, there's a whole host of other things that happen too. But by distorting our actions through the use of moral justification, we can abandon our convictions. There's some research out there that has indicated that there's a difference between justifications before an ethical violation is committed. It's called pre-violation. And this lessens the anticipatory threat to our view of ourself being defined by these questionable actions. And I'm going to talk about 3 of these pre-violations, particularly as they deal with infidelity or any kind of sexual acting out. The first one is called ambiguity. And it's situations where the rules are ambiguous. Now, most of us agree that there is nothing ambiguous about infidelity, especially here in the U.S. If you're in other cultures, there might be. But some people will shuffle facts around leading to an affair or a porn addiction and are much more mentally flexible in recording the details and how they got there, which allows them to use this ambiguity in this self-serving manner. The other one is this self-serving altruism, where we can perceive lies as justified when they benefit both the person telling the lie and another person. In the case of infidelity, the unfaithful spouse won't tell the whole truth about where they've been or where they're going so that they don't hurt their spouse any more than they already have, and that they don't get in more trouble than they already are, or the anticipation of being in trouble. So there's this, again, it doesn't make sense sometimes, but it's this mental gymnastics that we do that serves ourselves, and we think we're serving the other person too. And the other one that we see frequently is this, what they call moral licensing. It's like this balancing scale. Once we collect enough moral credentials in one area that I tithe or I give a lot or I take care of other people, I help other people a lot, then sometimes, I see this frequently actually, is that we feel entitled to act immorally in another area, like having a relationship over here on the side or looking at porn in secret. So thereby we're shielding the unfaithful from feeling bad about violating moral rules. Again, none of it makes it okay, but just thinking about the mental gymnastics, the way they can turn things around and around and around to make what we're doing seem okay. So those are just 3 examples of this pre-violation. There's another term that they call, or they use, post-violation, which lessens the threat by compensating for the action itself. These are what I see most often because, people come in after an affair. The first one that resonated with me was this cleansing. And you can see it in physical ways and in symbolic ways, and sometimes there's this melding of the two. But you've seen it in movies a lot of times where after an affair or some horrible event that somebody does, what do? They go take a long hot shower and they just scrub their sins away. And for some in our world, that it might look like going on a long fast from some activity or food or something like that. I don't see this one as much, but it does happen is they'll start to inflict pain on themselves too, but there's some kind of cleansing ritual. The other thing we do is we confess. And I see two different things going on in my office. There are some people that will come in and confess everything that they've ever done. They turn over this new leaf in their moral accountability or their moral journal. They ask forgiveness for everything from you and from their higher power. Sometimes, though, even genuinely regretful, remorseful people will only partially confess. And this partial confession allows us to feel the dignity of admitting our failure, but without bringing the consequences of a full destruction to the situation. And lastly, I see this distancing. This is probably the most common, most popular thing that I see in my office. And research suggests that when we can't deny any longer, we can't confess anymore, or we can't compensate, and I think that's the real thing, is that we can't in our minds compensate for what we've done, for our wrongdoing, we will distance ourselves emotionally from the behavior and most oftentimes even from the one that we've hurt. And that even perpetuates the hurt and the loneliness and the rejection and the abandonment when we do that. But it's a really common way that we handle that. When we do that, the other side of that coin is that we often judge other people's immoral behavior even more harshly because we haven't done our own work to work through all of that. What that does is it lessens, at least temporarily, the tensions that we feel when we've hurt someone else. And the other thing I would add here is that the use of moral justification isn't just reserved for those who've been unfaithful. Frequently, almost always, those who have been betrayed can use it as well. I've been involved in hundreds, maybe even thousands of couples where the hurt spouse has suspended their own morals and acted in ways they never thought they would have, either through their anger or other ways where they've compromised themselves and their moral code, their core values. The moral justifications allow them to behave in ways that are contrary to love and contrary to the restoration as a whole, at least temporarily. And I want to emphasize again that none of this is an excuse for what has happened, but everybody is asking why? And so we're giving you guys some ideas on why this happens and how we get from here, a person that would never, ever in a million years say that they were going to have an affair, to getting over here to where they did. And there's a big space here. We're trying to help you understand, put the pieces of the puzzle together. It certainly isn't an excuse, but moral justification provides a well-worn, timeless pathway to an affair. In retrospect, moral justifications seem irrational to everybody once you get a little further down the road. However, in the moment, they provide a plausible excuse to abandon love and what we know not to be true for behaviors that are also self-serving. We all differ in the extent to which we care about morality and our ability to withstand threats to how we perceive our true self. You heard me talk about Albert Bandura the last couple of weeks. He used a term called moral disengagement as well, which is the extent to which we can detach ourselves from our misconduct. The implication is that people with higher moral disengagement will be more likely to engage in the pre and the post moral justifications. Infidelity is so widespread on this planet. I've barely scratched the surface of the research on these self-serving justifications that allow people to do wrong and then feel somewhat okay about it. Moral justifications allow both parties to abandon their vows and act in ways that are contrary to their core values. We forget that people change by contrast, not by conflict. And there's a huge difference between the two. You've probably heard Rick talk about it. I think I've heard Rick talk about this for 25 years. It's not responding in reciprocity to those that wound us that creates change. It's rather responding with empathy, with compassion, and with love that provides the necessary contrast to convict the other party of their bad behavior. We'll never, ever be true to others until we learn to be true to ourselves. Remember, I've said that we betray ourselves first. And I'm not talking about pleasing ourselves. That's totally different. That would be narcissism. But being true to ourselves is about being consistent with our own morals and our own core values. If you're seeking to behave more ethically, acknowledge the power of justifications in shaping our self-serving perceptions is key, because we all have them. And there's no shame in that. You have to be able to look at that and acknowledge it within each and every one of us without judgment or criticism. It's part of the human experience. Healing our shame and taming our drive to justify our behavior may be the path to more ethical conduct in the long haul. It's hard work, but it's work that really will endure over time. If you'd like to learn more about the recovery journey of others and see real-life stories of those who have been where you are and found healing, I want to invite you to consider coming to one of the EMS weekends. What we have found is that we all need a safe place to talk and to be with other people and to do everything within our power, to provide that safe place where it's possible to rationally explore your alternatives to what you're going to do next. If you're looking for help on how to diffuse this justification process that we can all find ourselves in, you'll find the weekend to be one of the most professional environments in the country for those struggling with infidelity and or addictions. I can tell you that we're already sold out for January and February, and March is close to filling up if it hasn't already. So sign up quickly if you're interested. Please consider that and come and join us. We think it'll be a really safe place for you to help you make some decisions along the way. Could be a very great next step for you. I'll be back next week to talk more about the why and how affairs happen. So please join me then. Thanks so much.